On my wedding night, I crouched beneath the bed to pull a prank on my husband. But another woman walked into the room and set her phone to speaker. What I heard next froze my blood. Can you imagine your wedding night? The happiest day of your life, or so you think. But then, hiding under your own bed, you overhear a conversation that rips your entire world apart, revealing a calculated, years-long con to steal everything from you. My whole life was a lie. And it involved a baby. That night, the dust under the bed was already starting to choke me. I pressed my hand so hard over my mouth, desperate to keep from sneezing. I was lying flat on my stomach, my expensive white wedding dress, now crumpled and dirty, snagging on the rough fibers of the rug. It sounds ridiculous, right? A 30-year-old woman hiding under her bed on her wedding night like some kid playing hide-and-seek. But I just wanted to see the look on Preston's face. I had this whole scenario planned out. He'd walk into our bridal suite, loosen his tie, maybe call out my name. Valerie, Val? In that soft, confused voice I loved so much. And then, surprise! I'd roll out from under the bed, probably looking like a glorious mess of tulle and silk, and we'd collapse onto the mattress, laughing. It was supposed to be the start of our happily ever after. We had just spent the last 6 hours dancing, cutting cake, shaking hands with people I barely knew. Now, finally, it was just us. Or so I thought. The heavy mahogany door creaked open. I bit my lip, suppressing a giggle, my muscles tensing, ready to spring up. But the footsteps, they were wrong. They weren't Preston's confident, heavy strides. These were sharp, staccato clicks. Clack. Clack clack. High heels. Expensive ones. I froze. Through the tiny gap between the duvet and the floor, I saw them, a pair of silver designer stilettos. They stopped right in the middle of the room. And my heart sank, because I recognized those shoes immediately. They belonged to Brenda. My brand new mother-in-law. Yes, Shanice, I'm in the suite now. Brenda's voice sliced through the air, sharp and imperious. She wasn't whispering. She sounded like she owned the place. She put her phone on speaker and tossed it onto the bed, the very bed I was hiding under. The mattress springs groaned above my head, pressing down slightly. Did they leave yet? A tiny female voice asked from the phone. Preston is downstairs handling the final bill with the caterers. Brenda scoffed. And the girl? Well, who knows where she is? Probably in the bathroom fixing her cheap makeup. She began pacing around the room. The clack-clack-clack of her heels echoed like gunshots in my ears. My heart hammered against my ribs. The girl? Cheap makeup? Just hours ago, this woman had hugged me, tears in her eyes, welcoming me into the family. She had called me a blessing. So is it done? Shanice asked. It's done, Brenda said. I heard the sound of a lighter flicking, followed by a long exhale. Smoke drifted down to the floor, stinging my nose. The ring is on the finger. The license is signed. We've got her locked down, and she has no idea. Brenda laughed. A dry, cruel sound that scraped against my soul. Valerie is a simpleton, a country mouse. She thinks she hit the jackpot landing my son. She has no idea she's just a glorified placeholder. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands turned ice cold. What was she talking about? But Brenda, the voice on the phone continued. Are you sure about the condo? If they divorce, won't she take half? We have it all mapped out. Brenda replied, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone that made my stomach churn. They lived together for a year, maybe 18 months tops. Enough to make it look real. Then Preston starts the complaints. We make her look unstable. Or better yet, we make her life so miserable she leaves on her own. We have the receipts showing Preston paid the down payment. We'll claim the condo in court. She won't have the money for a decent lawyer. I covered my mouth with both hands now, tears stinging my eyes. The condo? Our beautiful penthouse in downtown Atlanta? It was legally in my name, but I had let Preston handle the transaction, to boost his ego, to make him feel like the provider. She's practically an orphan. Brenda continued, kicking off one of her silver shoes. It landed inches from my nose. Her father is some retired nobody living on a pension in Florida. She has no support system. Once we take the assets, she'll go back to whatever trailer park mentality she came from. And Preston will finally be free to marry someone with actual class. Someone like Kendra. Kendra. The name hit me like a physical blow. Kendra was Preston's childhood friend. The woman who had been at the wedding today, wearing a red dress that was a little too tight, smiling a little too widely. Preston is on his way up, Brenda said, blowing smoke towards the ceiling. He just needed a stepping stone. And Valerie, well, she's a very sturdy stepping stone. We'll sell the condo, invest the money in the firm, and he'll be set for life. I lay there, my body trembling so hard I was terrified the floorboards would vibrate. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a heist. My marriage, my love, my life, it was all just a long con to steal a piece of real estate. Suddenly, Brenda stopped pacing. Wait, she murmured. She walked towards the bed. I saw her feet turn towards me. She crouched down. I stopped breathing. My heart stopped beating. Through the gap, I saw her hand reach out. Her long, manicured nails scraped against the hardwood floor, inches from my face. She picked up something. My pearl earring. I must have dropped it when I crawled under. She held it up, inspecting it. Cheap junk, she muttered, tossing it onto the bedside table. Probably plastic. She stood up again, and I nearly fainted from relief. But the relief was short-lived. The door handle turned. Mom? Preston's voice called out. In here, sweetheart, Brenda cooed, her tone instantly switching from cold predator to doting mother. My husband walked into the room. The man I had vowed to love and cherish not 3 hours ago. I waited, praying, hoping against hope that he would tell her to leave, that he would say something to defend me. Instead, he sighed and flopped onto the bed, right above me. Is she here? He asked. No, Brenda said. Probably lost in the hallway. Listen, we need to talk about the bank transfer before she gets back. I know, Mom, I know, Preston groaned. But can we do this tomorrow? I have to pretend to be excited to consummate this marriage tonight, and it's going to take a lot of energy. Something inside me broke. It wasn't a crack. It was a shattering. The naive, happy Valerie died in that dusty darkness under the bed, and something else began to wake up. I carefully reached into the bodice of my dress and pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen silently, opening the voice recorder app. The red lines started moving. Talk, I thought, a cold rage settling over me. Keep talking, you monsters. Give me everything. And they did. To understand why a woman with a master's degree in business and a trust fund that could buy this entire hotel was hiding under a bed, letting people believe she was poor, you have to understand my mother. My mother, Elena, was the kindest soul you could ever meet. She was also incredibly wealthy, heiress to a shipping fortune. She married my father, Robert, when he was just starting his construction business. They were a power couple, but my mother, she loved with her eyes closed. When she passed away 10 years ago, it wasn't just the cancer that took her body. It was the heartbreak that weakened her spirit. She had found out that her own sister and her best friend had been siphoning money from her charity funds for years. They didn't love her. They loved what she could give them. On her deathbed, she held my hand and made me promise. Valerie, she whispered, her voice frail. Find someone who loves you for you. Not for the name, not for the accounts. Be careful, my love. Money is a magnifying glass. It shows you exactly who people are. But sometimes it burns you before you can see the truth. That promise became my Bible. My father, Robert, took it to the extreme. He was a shark in the business world, the CEO of Titan Construction. He taught me how to read contracts before I could read fairy tales. When I started dating, he was suspicious of everyone. They smell the money, Val. He'd warned me. They look at you and see a lottery ticket. So, I created a test, a filter. I moved out of the family estate in Buckhead and rented a charming, slightly run-down apartment in a working-class neighborhood. I drove a 5-year-old Honda Civic. I worked as an administrative assistant at a logistics firm, a job I actually enjoyed because it was low stress, though I secretly managed my own investment portfolio at night. To the world I was Valerie, the nice girl with the student loans and a budget for groceries. Then I met Preston. It was a rainy Tuesday. I was rushing into a coffee shop and dropped my wallet in a puddle. Mud splashed everywhere. I was on the verge of tears. It had been a terrible week. When a handsome man in a slightly frayed jacket picked it up, he wiped the mud off with his own sleeve. "I think this belongs to you," he said, smiling. His eyes were warm, hazel with flecks of green. I checked the wallet. Nothing was missing. I offered to buy him a coffee as a thank you. "I'd love that," he said, checking his watch. "I have about 20 minutes before I have to get back to the grind." We talked for 2 hours. He told me he was a sales associate struggling to meet quotas, driving an old car that broke down every other week. He talked about his dreams of traveling, of seeing art in Italy, but how he could never afford it. "I don't care about being rich," he told me, looking deep into my eyes. "I just want a life that feels real. You know, Sunday barbecues, a dog, someone to share the silence with." It was exactly what I wanted to hear. Over the next 2 years, Preston passed every test. He never asked to borrow money. He brought me wildflowers he picked from the side of the road because he couldn't afford fancy roses, but thought these were prettier. He clipped coupons with me. When my car broke down, a staged event I admit, he drove 40 minutes out of his way to pick me up every morning for a week. I fell in love. Deeply, madly, stupidly. I introduced him to my father, Robert, but I maintained the lie. I told Preston my dad was a retired foreman living on a pension in Florida. Dad played along, though he grumbled about it. He flew in for a visit, wearing flannel shirts and complaining about the cost of gas, hiding his Rolex in his pocket. "He seems okay," Dad admitted after dinner one night, swirling a cheap beer he hated. "But he's soft, Val. He listens to his mother too much." "He respects his mother, Dad," I defended. "That's a good trait." Oh, how wrong I was. Brenda. The first time I met her, she looked me up and down like I was a stain on her carpet. She lived in a small, cluttered house but acted like she was royalty in exile. She constantly talked about how Preston deserved better and how expensive life was. "Valerie," she'd say, sipping tea, "do you really think you can support a family on an admin salary? Preston needs a partner who can elevate him." I just smiled and swallowed the insults, thinking, if only you knew. I thought once we were married, once I revealed the truth about my wealth, she would be happy. I planned to tell Preston everything on our honeymoon. I wanted to see his face light up when I told him he never had to worry about a quota again. I was so excited to give him the world. I didn't realize he was already planning to steal the little piece of it I had shown him. The wedding planning should have been the happiest time of my life, but looking back, the red flags were waving so hard they were practically slapping me in the face. First, there was the guest list. Brenda insisted on inviting half the town. "It's about image, Valerie," she snapped when I suggested a small, intimate ceremony. "We need to show people that the Ramos family is doing well." Since I was supposedly poor, Brenda and Preston assumed I couldn't pay for much. Brenda made a big show of chipping in, but every time the bill came for the flowers or the venue, she'd conveniently leave her purse in the car or her card would be declined due to a bank error. I ended up paying for almost everything using my savings, which was actually a limitless black card I kept hidden in a secret compartment of my wallet. Then came Kendra. "Valerie, you have to meet Kendra," Preston said one evening about 3 months before the wedding. "She's like a sister to me. We grew up together." Kendra was stunning, in a flashy, obvious way. Tight clothes, a loud laugh, and a way of touching Preston's arm every time she spoke. When we met for drinks, she barely looked at me. She spent the entire night reminiscing with Preston about the good old days, and inside jokes I didn't understand. Oh, remember that night in Cabo? She giggled, leaning into him. I thought you said you couldn't afford to travel? I asked Preston, confused. He froze for a second. That was a high school trip. My parents saved up for years for it. Brenda adored Kendra. She would openly compare us. Kendra, darling, that dress is exquisite. You look like a movie star. Valerie, maybe Kendra can take you shopping. You dress so plainly. I brushed it off. I told myself I was secure. I had the ring. I had the man. Kendra was just a friend from the past. But the biggest issue was the condo. We needed a place to live. Preston was renting a bachelor pad, and my apartment was too small. I found a stunning penthouse condo in downtown Atlanta. It was a foreclosure, a steal at $600,000, but still way out of the budget of an admin assistant and a salesman. I have an inheritance, I told Preston one night. It was a half-truth. My grandmother left me some money. It's enough to buy this place in cash. Preston's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Cash? Valerie? Are you serious? Yes. I want us to start debt-free. That night, Brenda came over. She was suddenly very interested in me. She looked at me with predatory eyes. That is wonderful news, Valerie, she purred. But you know, buying property is complicated. Taxes, insurance, liability. You've never handled real estate. Preston deals with contracts all day. I can handle it, I said. Of course you can, Preston said, taking my hand. But baby, think about the optics. My mom is right. Plus, I want to feel like I'm contributing. If you put the money in my account, I can write the check. I can handle the negotiations with the HOA. It'll make me look like the man of the house to the neighbors. Please, for my pride. It sounded so stupid, but he looked so earnest. And Brenda was nodding along. It's a respect thing, Valerie. A wife shouldn't emasculate her husband before the marriage even starts. So I did it. I transferred the funds. But I wasn't an idiot. My father raised me better than that. I had my lawyer, Justine, draft the deed. The money went through Preston's account to show the transaction, but the deed to the property? That was 100% in my name. Preston, however, didn't read the fine print of the closing documents. He just saw the money hit his account and then leave it. He thought because he wrote the check, he owned the house. He thought he had played me. I remembered the day we got the keys. Preston spun me around in the empty living room. Our castle, he said. My castle, I whispered into his shoulder, though he didn't hear me. Now, lying under the bed, hearing Brenda talk about claiming the condo, the pieces fell into place. They didn't know the deed was solely mine. They thought it was marital assets bought with his money because the check came from his account. They thought they could argue that I contributed nothing. Brenda's voice snapped me back to the present. When does the lease on your apartment run out, Kendra? Brenda asked on the phone. The name jolted me. Kendra was on speakerphone? No, wait. Brenda was talking to Preston now, asking about Kendra. Her lease is up in 6 months, Preston said, his voice muffled as he buried his face in a pillow. That's why we need to speed this up, Mom. I can't have her crashing on her sister's couch forever. Plus, the baby needs a room. The world stopped. The silence under the bed was deafening. The baby? I clamped my hand over my mouth so hard I tasted blood. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. The baby? Don't worry about the baby, Brenda said, her tone dismissive yet practical. We'll set up the nursery in the second bedroom once Valerie is gone. We can paint over that hideous yellow she chose. My stomach lurched violently. I felt like I was going to vomit right there on the rug. Kendra was pregnant. Preston, my husband of less than 24 hours, had gotten his sister-like friend pregnant. I just feel bad, Mom, Preston said. For a second, a tiny spark of hope flared in my chest. Maybe he had a conscience. Maybe he actually cared about me. Bad about what? Brenda snapped. About securing your future? No, just Valerie is nice. She's cooked for me. She washed my car. She looks at me like I'm a hero. It's going to be brutal crushing her like that. Oh, spare me the tears, Preston, Brenda scoffed. She's a nobody. Preston. You said it yourself? She's boring. She reads books on weekends instead of networking. She wears clothes from Target. Do you want to be married to a coupon clipper for the rest of your life? Or do you want to be with Kendra, who actually knows how to shine in high society? Kendra is fire. Kendra is fire. Preston agreed, his voice changing, becoming lustful. Valerie is oatmeal. Oatmeal. That single word hurt more than the financial betrayal. I had dimmed my light for him. I had hidden my designer wardrobe, my knowledge of fine wine, my connections to senators and CEOs, all to make him feel comfortable. I became oatmeal because I thought he wanted simple, wholesome love. Exactly, Brenda said. Now, did you get the bank notifications? Did the rest of the wedding cash deposits clear? Yeah, about 10 grand. It's in our joint account. Good. Tomorrow you transfer half of that to my account for wedding reimbursement expenses. We need to drain that joint account slowly so when you file for divorce there's nothing for her to take. Got it. And the condo? You have the receipts. I have the transfer receipt from my bank account to the seller. It shows I paid the $600,000. She can't prove where that money came from if we say it was a private loan from family that I'm paying back. They were so confident. So incredibly stupid and confident. They had no idea about forensic accounting. They had no idea that my pensioner father had a legal team that ate sharks like them for breakfast. All right, get up, Brenda ordered. Go wash your face. You look guilty. When she comes back, you need to perform. Smile. Talk about the future. Make her feel safe. I really don't want to sleep with her tonight, Mom. Preston, you have to consummate the marriage. It makes the annulment harder for her to get later if she tries that route. We need this to be a divorce so we can split assets. Fine, Preston groaned. He stood up from the bed. The mattress lifted, relieving the pressure above me. I'll go check the hallway. Maybe she's crying in the stairwell or something. I'm leaving, Brenda announced. I took the spare key from her purse earlier. I'll let myself out. She took my key. She went through my purse. The violation made my skin crawl. I watched Brenda's silver heels clack towards the door. Preston's dress shoes followed. Good night, Mom. Thanks for everything. Anything for my boy. Just remember the plan. 1 year, then you're free. The door clicked shut. Silence returned to the room. But it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, charged with the energy of my shattered life. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. I needed to be sure they were gone. Slowly, painfully, I wiggled out from under the bed. My body ached. My beautiful dress was gray with dust. I stood up and caught my reflection in the mirror. My hair was disheveled. My makeup smeared. But my eyes were clear. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A cold, mechanical calm took over. It was the same calm my father used when he was about to hostilely take over a rival company. I walked to the closet. I stripped off the wedding dress, the symbol of my stupidity, and threw it into the corner. I pulled on a pair of jeans and a hoodie I had packed for the morning after brunch. I grabbed my purse. Brenda had indeed taken the spare house key, but my car keys were still there. And my black card. I opened the door to the hallway. It was empty. Preston must have actually gone down to the lobby or the bar to work up the courage to sleep with me. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs, running down 12 flights in my sneakers. I burst out into the cool night air, found my beat-up Civic, which, by the way, had a Porsche engine under the hood, my one little indulgence, and tore out of the parking lot. I wasn't going to the condo. I wasn't going to cry in a hotel. I punched a number into my car's Bluetooth system. Dad, I said when he answered on the second ring. Valerie, it's 1 a.m. Is everything okay? No, I said, my voice steady. You were right about everything. I need you to wake up, Justine. I'm coming to the estate. We're going to war. The drive to Buckhead usually took 40 minutes. I made it in 20. I pulled up to the massive iron gates of my father's estate. The security camera recognized my license plate, and the gates swung open silently. As I drove up the winding driveway, lined with century-old oaks, I felt the shedding of Valerie, the admin assistant. I was returning to my kingdom. My father was waiting on the front porch, wearing his silk robe, a cigar unlit in his hand. Next to him was Justine, my best friend and the fiercest corporate lawyer in Atlanta. She was wearing pajamas but had a laptop open on the outdoor table. I slammed the car door shut and walked up the steps. Dad looked at me, the dust on my hoodie, the hard set of my jaw, and he didn't say, "I told you so." He just opened his arms. I hugged him, and for exactly 10 seconds, I let myself be a little girl. I let one sob escape. Then I pulled back. "They planned it," I said, my voice crisp. "Preston, his mother, and Kendra. They want the condo. They want to drain the accounts. Kendra is pregnant." Justine gasped. "Pregnant on your wedding day?" "Yes." I recorded everything. I placed my phone on the glass table and hit play. In the quiet night air, Brenda's voice sounded even more demonic. We listened to the whole thing: the oatmeal, comment, the plan to make me miserable, the embezzlement of the wedding money. When it finished, my father's face was a mask of fury. He snapped the unlit cigar in half. "I will bury him," he growled. "I will buy the company he works for and fire him. I will have that mother of his evicted by noon." "No," I said. "That's too fast. That's too easy." I looked at Justine. "If we attack now, they'll play the victim. They'll say I'm a crazy, jealous wife. They might even try to fight for the condo, claiming verbal contracts or some nonsense. I want to crush them completely. I want them to think they won. And then I want to pull the rug out so hard they never stand up again." Justine cracked her knuckles, a wicked smile spreading across her face. "I like where this is going. What's the plan?" "First," I said, "the condo. They think they have a claim because the money flowed through his account. We need to lock that down." "Easy," Justine said, typing furiously. "Since the deed is in your name, we create a post-nuptial agreement. We frame it as an insurance requirement. We tell Preston that because the building has high liability, the insurance company requires a clear title holder to minimize risk. We slip in a clause that waives all his marital interest in the property in exchange for, let's say, a lower insurance premium. He's greedy," I added. "If we tell him it saves him $500 a month, he'll sign it without reading." "Done," Justine said. "I'll have the papers ready by morning. You tell him it's standard procedure." "Second," my father said, "financials. You need to separate your assets. I need to drain the joint account before he does. But I can't look suspicious." "Leave the joint account," Justine advised. "Let him take the wedding money. It's bait. But we need to check his work history. If he's this dishonest with you, he's dishonest elsewhere." Dad picked up his phone. "I'll have my private investigator run a deep dive on Preston's sales numbers and expenses at his firm. If he's embezzling from us, he's probably skimming from them, too." "And the baby?" I said, my voice dropping. "We need proof." "DNA?" Justine asked. "No, that takes too long. I need to get close to Kendra. I need her to admit it." "You're going back there?" Dad asked, looking worried. "Valerie, you don't have to. You can stay here. We can serve him papers in the morning." "No." I stood up. "He called me oatmeal. He thinks I'm stupid. He thinks I'm weak. I'm going to go back there, act like the dumb, clumsy wife he thinks I am. I'm going to make his life a living hell for the next month. And I'm going to gather enough evidence to send him to jail, not just divorce court." I looked at the sunrise starting to bleed purple over the horizon. "He wanted a country mouse," I said. He's about to find out he married a rat trap. I drove back to the hotel just as the sun broke. I sneaked back up the stairs, changed back into my pajamas, and fixed my hair. I crawled into bed next to Preston. He smelled like stale champagne and deception. He stirred, opening one eye. "Val," he mumbled. "Where were you?" I couldn't sleep. I whispered, giving him a wide, vacuous smile. "I was just so excited about our future, honey. I was downstairs planning our life." He groaned and rolled over, turning his back to me. "That's nice, babe. Go to sleep." I stared at the back of his head. "Sleep tight, Preston. It's the last peaceful rest you'll ever have." The next morning, the performance of a lifetime began. I woke up before Preston and ordered room service. The most expensive items on the menu: lobster benedict, truffle fries, champagne. When the bill came, I signed room 402 with a flourish. Preston woke up, rubbing his eyes. "Whoa, what's all this?" "Celebration breakfast," I chirped. "I figured since we have all that wedding money, we should treat ourselves." Preston flinched. Val, we need to be careful with that money, Mom. I mean, we agreed to save it for a rainy day." "Oh, don't be a spoilsport." I popped a strawberry into my mouth. I also booked a couple's massage at the spa. It's $600, non-refundable. His jaw tightened. I could see him mentally subtracting $600 from the money he planned to steal for Brenda. "Valerie, you should have asked me." "But I'm your wife." "Isn't my money your money?" I batted my eyelashes innocently. "By the way, I accidentally dropped your phone in the ice bucket. It's in rice now." "You what?" He scrambled out of bed. I hadn't dropped it, of course, but I had disabled the fingerprint ID while he was sleeping so I could access it later. We moved into the condo 2 days later. That's when I turned the dial up to 10. Brenda came over to inspect the place. She walked in like she was the landlady, running her finger over the countertops. "This place is dusty," she criticized. "Valerie, you need to be more diligent." "Oh, Brenda, I'm so glad you're here," I exclaimed. "I decided to do laundry, but this machine is so complicated." I led her to the laundry room. Inside the washing machine, turning in hot water and heavy-duty bleach, was her prized possession, a vintage faux fur coat she had left at Preston's bachelor pad, which I had helpfully brought over to clean. Is that my coat?" Brenda shrieked. "Yes. I wanted to surprise you by cleaning it." I beamed. She ripped the machine open. Water spilled everywhere. She pulled out a soggy, matted lump of gray fur that looked like a drowned rat. "You idiot!" she screamed. "This is dry clean only. It costs $2,000. "Oh no!" I started crying fake tears. I just wanted to help. The tag was so small. Preston ran in. "What's happening?" "She ruined my coat," Brenda yelled. "Look at this." "I'm sorry," I wailed, burying my face in Preston's chest. "I'm just a simple girl. I don't know about fancy coats." Preston looked at his mother, then at me. He was furious, but he remembered the plan. He had to keep me happy. It's okay, Mom," he said through gritted teeth. "It was an accident. Val didn't know. She's a liability," Brenda hissed, storming out with her wet coat. That night, while Preston was seething on the couch, I brought out the paperwork Justine had prepared. "Honey," I said, sniffling, "I feel so bad about the coat. I want to make sure I don't mess anything else up. The insurance company sent this over today. They said because the condo is high value, the liability policy is huge." I paused for effect. "But, if you sign this waiver?" "Saying you're not the primary owner, the premium drops by $500 a month. Since I caused you to lose money today, I thought saving money here would help." Preston's eyes lit up at $500 a month. "Let me see." He skimmed it. It was thick, full of legal jargon. He saw the words, "Insurance Liability Waiver," at the top, which Justine had cleverly bolded, and missed the paragraph about relinquishing all marital claims to real property. Yeah, okay, he said, grabbing a pen. At least you're trying to fix your mess. He signed it. I watched the ink dry. Click. The trap snapped shut. Over the next 2 weeks, I was a tornado of incompetence. I cooked dinner every night, but I accidentally used salt instead of sugar in his coffee. I shrank his favorite cashmere sweaters. I forgot to pay the internet bill, so he couldn't play his video games for 3 days. I was driving him insane. And the more annoyed he got, the more he ran to Kendra. I tracked him. My father, had installed a GPS on Preston's car. Every time Preston said he was working late, he was at Kendra's apartment. One night, he came home smelling of her perfume, a cheap vanilla scent. Work was brutal. He sighed, lying down. You work so hard, I said, massaging his shoulders. You deserve a break. Why don't we throw a dinner party? A what? A dinner party? For your family? Your mom is still mad about the coat. I want to make it up to her. Let's invite everyone. Brenda, your cousins, and Kendra, too. She's your best friend, right? Preston hesitated. I don't know, Val. You're not exactly a master chef. I'll practice. I promised. Please. I want to show them I can be the perfect wife. He smirked. I knew what he was thinking. Let her embarrass herself. It'll make the divorce narrative easier. Everyone will see she's incompetent. Fine, he said. Next Saturday, but don't screw it up. I won't. I smiled. I promise. The invitation list grew rapidly. Brenda, seemingly eager to witness another one of my failures, invited her sister, her 2 gossiping nieces, and, of course, Kendra. It was going to be a full house of people who despised me. Justine came over while Preston was at work to help me prep. In reality, we were installing tiny cameras in the living room and dining room. You sure about this? Justine asked, checking the feed on her tablet. It's going to be brutal. I need witnesses, I said, chopping onions with aggressive precision. I need them to say the worst things possible on camera, and I need to confirm the pregnancy. On the day of the party, I woke up early. I went to the store and bought the cheapest, lowest quality ingredients I could find: fatty ground beef, wilted vegetables, a box of wine that cost $9. I also went into the bathroom while Preston was showering. I rummaged through his gym bag, the one he took to work, but actually took to Kendra's. Inside, hidden in a side pocket, was a receipt from a pharmacy. Prenatal vitamins. Date yesterday. Got you. I pocketed the receipt. The guests started arriving at 6 p.m. Brenda walked in first, wearing a new dress that I suspected was bought with it. Wedding reimbursement money Preston had transferred to her. Well, she sniffed, looking around. At least you swept the floor this time. Welcome, Brenda, I chirped, handing her a glass of the cheap wine. She took a sip and grimaced. What is this? Vinegar? It's an artisanal blend. I lied. Then came Kendra. She walked in holding Preston's arm a little too tightly. She was wearing a loose-fitting dress, trying to hide her small bump, but I saw the way she subconsciously rested her hand on her stomach. Hi, Valerie, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. House looks cozy. Hi, Kendra. So glad you could come. You're glowing, I said, staring directly at her midsection. She flinched and pulled her hand away. Preston stepped between us. Okay, let's get drinks. I'm starving. I went to the kitchen. The menu for the night: overcooked, rubbery roast beef, mashed potatoes with lumps, and a salad that was mostly iceberg lettuce stems. As I worked, I listened to the monitor from the living room camera. God, this wine is swill. Brenda's voice came through. I can't believe he married her. Even for the money. Shush, Mom, Preston whispered. Just a few more months, then we get the condo, sell it, and we get the big house in the suburbs. I hate hiding it. My back hurts. I want to be able to post pictures of us. Kendra whined. Soon, babe. As soon as we kick the country mouse back to the trailer park. Preston laughed. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter. My knuckles turned white. Country mouse. I took a deep breath. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the special seasoning I had prepared. It wasn't poison. I wasn't a criminal. But it was a very liberal amount of salt and vinegar for the sauce. Dinner is served, I called out cheerfully. We all sat down. The table was set. The flying monkeys, Brenda's nieces, were snickering at my mismatched napkins. So, Valerie, Brenda started, stabbing at the rubbery meat. Preston tells us you're thinking of taking a cooking class. Clearly you haven't started yet. The table erupted in laughter. Preston chuckled along, squeezing Kendra's hand under the table. Actually, I said, my voice shaking slightly, great acting, if I do say so myself. I tried really hard on this. Trying isn't doing, honey, Kendra said, smirking. Some women are just built to be wives, and some aren't. Is that right? I asked, looking her dead in the eye. And what makes a good wife, Kendra? Sleeping with someone else's husband? The table went silent. Excuse me? Kendra gasped. Oh, sorry. I laughed nervously. I meant, being supportive. Pass the potatoes. Preston glared at me. Valerie, don't be weird. I'm not being weird, I said, standing up to pour more wine. I moved towards Kendra. I just admire your friendship. It's so close. I tripped. On the rug? The pitcher of red wine flew out of my hands. It splashed directly onto Kendra's lap. H! She screamed, jumping up. The red liquid soaked her dress, clinging to her stomach, revealing the unmistakable curve of a baby bump. Oh my God! I shouted. I'm so clumsy. You stupid bitch. Kendra yelled, forgetting her act. Look what you did. This is silk. Calm down, Kendra. Preston yelled, rushing to her side, grabbing napkins to dab her stomach. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? Silence. Absolute, total silence. Preston froze. He realized what he had just said. He slowly turned to look at me. Brenda looked at me. Kendra looked at me. I wasn't crying. I wasn't apologizing. I was standing at the head of the table. And for the first time in months, I wasn't smiling. The air in the room was so thick you could choke on it. The words, "Is the baby okay?" hung suspended between us like a grenade that had just had the pin pulled. Preston's face went from panic to pale terror. He stammered, I meant, she's Preston means. Brenda interjected loudly, standing up to shield her son. Is she okay? You know how fragile Kendra is. You clumsy idiot, Valerie. Look at this mess. She pointed a long, accusatory finger at me. You are useless. Useless. You can't cook. You can't clean. And now you're assaulting our guests. I told Preston he was making a mistake marrying trash like you. Usually, this was the part where I would cower, where I would apologize and run to the kitchen to fetch towels. Instead, I picked up my napkin and calmly wiped a drop of wine from my hand. Sit down, Brenda, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was cold. Absolute zero. Excuse me? Brenda blinked, shocked by the tone. I said sit down. I looked at Preston. And you, get away from her stomach. We all know what's in there. Valerie, you're drunk, Preston said, trying to regain control. He puffed out his chest using his man of the house voice. Go to your room. We'll discuss this later. No, we'll discuss it now, I said. I walked over to the sideboard where the stereo system was connected. I picked up the microphone Preston used for karaoke, his favorite hobby. What are you doing? Kendra hissed, clutching her wine-soaked dress. You're crazy. Maybe. I smiled. Crazy rich. They looked confused. You see, I began, pacing slowly around the table like a shark circling a sinking boat. For the last 2 months, I've listened to you all. I've listened to Brenda call me a peasant. I've listened to Preston call me oatmeal. I've listened to Kendra laugh about how she's going to redecorate my nursery. You were listening? Preston asked, his voice trembling. Oh, honey. I was doing a lot more than listening. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the receipt for the prenatal vitamins. I slammed it onto the table. Walgreens. Dated 2 days ago. Purchased by Preston Ramos. Prenatal vitamins. Preston's mouth opened and closed like a fish. And this. I pulled out the insurance waiver he had signed. Do you remember this, Preston? The insurance thing? It's a post-nuptial agreement, I said clearly. In it, you voluntarily waived all rights to this property. You admitted that 100% of the funds used to purchase it were mine, and you have no claim to it in the event of a divorce. You signed away the condo, Preston. You signed away your golden ticket for $500 a month. Brenda's face turned purple. You tricked him. That won't hold up in court. Oh, it will, I said. My lawyer, Justine, you know, the one you called that cheap attorney friend, is actually a senior partner at Darby and Associates. She ironclad that document. Who cares? Kendra yelled. Preston is leaving you anyway. He loves me. We're going to be a family, and you're going to be alone with your cats. Am I? I laughed. Preston, tell them where you got the money for Kendra's car, and for Brenda's new dress, and for this wedding reimbursement. Preston was sweating profusely now. I saved it from my commissions. No, I said. You stole it from Titan construction accounts. You inflated invoices. You thought nobody would notice because Titan is a huge company. So what? Brenda screamed. Titan doesn't know. I walked over to the door. I placed my hand on the knob. That's the funniest part, I said, looking back at them. You guys really didn't do a background check on me, did you? You assumed Valerie was just Valerie. What are you talking about? Preston whispered. My last name isn't just Smith, I said. It's Smith Vanderbilt. My father is Robert Smith, the CEO and owner of Titan Construction. The silence this time was heavy. It was the sound of 3 worlds colliding and shattering simultaneously. Brenda grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. No. That's a lie. Your father is a pensioner in Florida. He's in Florida right now. I nodded. On his yacht. Preston looked like he was going to faint. He had been stealing from his wife's father. He had been calling the heiress to the company he worked for. Oatmeal. You're the heiress? Preston squeaked. Yes, I said. And the only reason I didn't fire you immediately was because I wanted to see how deep the rot went. And wow, you guys are rotten to the core. Valerie, baby! Preston took a step forward, his hands up. Wait, we can explain. First, I was confused. Mom made me. Don't you dare blame your mother! Brenda shrieked, but her eyes were darting around, looking for an exit. It's too late for explanations, I said. I have the embezzlement records. I have the audio of you conspiring to defraud me. I have the proof of adultery. I tapped the microphone. And just so we're all on the same page, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that echoed through the room. I want you to hear exactly what I heard on my wedding night, just so you know that I didn't hide under the bed for nothing. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the Bluetooth speaker. The room filled with static. And then Brenda's voice boomed out, loud and clear. The girl is a simpleton. We'll claim the condo. She has no idea she's just a glorified placeholder. Brenda covered her ears. Kendra started crying. Preston sank into his chair, putting his head in his hands. But I wasn't done. The recording played on. My voice from the past, terrified, hiding under the bed, was silent, but Brenda's voice filled the dining room with toxic clarity. We'll claim the condo. She has no idea she's just a glorified placeholder. Preston looked like he was physically shrinking. He sat slumped in his chair, his face a mask of gray ash. Kendra was sobbing now, loud, ugly gasps that smeared her mascara down her cheeks. But Brenda, even now, cornered like a rat, she tried to bare her teeth. "Turn it off!" Brenda screeched, lunging for the phone. "This is illegal! You can't record people without their consent! It's inadmissible!" I snatched the phone away before her claw-like hands could reach it. "Actually, Brenda," I said, my voice commanding the chaos, "Georgia is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, me, it's entirely legal and entirely admissible." The front door, which I had unlocked remotely moments ago, burst open. Heavy boots thudded against the hardwood floor. Blue lights flashed through the front window, bouncing off the walls of the condo they thought they owned. Justine walked in first. She wasn't wearing her pajamas this time. She was in a razor-sharp charcoal suit, holding a leather folder like a weapon. Behind her were two uniformed officers and a detective I recognized from my father's security detail, Detective Miller, who worked with the fraud division. "Preston Ramos," Detective Miller announced, his voice booming. "You are under arrest." Preston scrambled up, knocking his chair over. "Arrest for what? I didn't do anything. It's a domestic dispute." "Not for the adultery, Mr. Ramos," Justine said, stepping forward with a smile that could cut glass. "Though that is grounds for the immediate divorce filing I have right here. No, you're under arrest for grand larceny, corporate embezzlement, and fraud against Titan Construction." "What?" Preston squeaked. "We audited your accounts, Preston," I said, leaning against the table. "You didn't just spend your commissions. You created 3 fake vendor accounts under the name BR Consulting, Brenda Ramos Consulting, I assume. You approved invoices for materials that were never delivered to Titan sites. You siphoned over $50,000 in the last 6 months alone." Brenda went pale. "First, I didn't know where the money came from. He told me it was a bonus." "The checks were deposited directly into your personal account, Mrs. Ramos," Detective Miller said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "And we have records of you instructing him via text on how to structure the deposits to avoid IRS flagging. That makes you an accessory and a co-conspirator to money laundering." "No!" Brenda screamed as the officer moved towards her. "I am a respectable woman. You can't touch me. Get away." The officer wasn't interested in her social standing. He spun her around. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. "Preston!" Kendra wailed, clutching her stomach. "Do something. You said you would take care of us." Preston looked at Kendra, then at his mother, then at me. The police were cuffing him now, pulling his arms behind his back. "Valerie," he pleaded, tears streaming down his face. "Valerie, please talk to your dad. Tell him to drop the charges. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll leave town. Just don't let me go to jail. I'm scared of jail. Val, you know I have asthma." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The handsome face I had fallen in love with now just looked pathetic. A weak man who tried to play a strong man's game and lost. "I'm sorry, Preston," I said softly. "But oatmeal doesn't have the authority to stop a criminal investigation. You did this to yourself." As they dragged him towards the door, he looked back at me one last time. The entitlement was gone, replaced by pure terror. Brenda was still shrieking about her rights, about how this was a mistake, about how she knew the mayor. She didn't. Justine handed me a file, the divorce papers and the eviction notice for the unauthorized occupants. I walked over to Kendra. She was the only one not in handcuffs, shivering in her wine-stained dress. "You have 5 minutes to leave," I told her. "Take your purse. Take your lies. If you're not out, I'm pressing charges for trespassing." "But he promised me," she whispered, looking at the empty doorway where Preston had just been hauled out. "He promised me too," I said. "He's a liar, Kendra. You're just the next victim. Run while you can." She scrambled up and ran out the door without looking back. The room fell silent. The storm had passed, leaving only the wreckage of a fake life. I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of the terrible dinner, the overturned chairs, and the echo of justice. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with adrenaline. I looked at Justine, who gave me a slow nod of respect. This was it. The moment I took my life back. The days following the arrest were a blur of legal motions and logistical dismantling. While Preston sat in a holding cell, unable to make bail because his assets were frozen, I went to work erasing him from my life. The first step was the physical purge. I didn't want the condo anymore. It was tainted. I hired a crew to pack up everything that belonged to me. As for Preston's things, his clothes, his beloved gaming console, his collection of limited edition sneakers he bought with stolen money, I didn't burn them. That would have been dramatic but illegal. Instead, I had them boxed up and sent to the only address he had left, Brenda's small, cluttered house. But Brenda wasn't there to receive them. It turned out Brenda's financial situation was even more precarious than we thought. She had leveraged her house to the hilt with second and third mortgages to fund her lifestyle and appearances. With the legal fees mounting for her defense and the sudden cut-off of Preston's stolen funds, the house of cards collapsed. Justine called me a week after the arrest. "You're going to want to hear this," she said, her voice sounding satisfied. "The bank foreclosed on Brenda's house yesterday. She's out on bail, but she has nowhere to go. She tried to move into a motel, but her credit cards are maxed out." "Where is she?" I asked, staring out the window of my father's estate. "She's staying with her sister. You know, the one who was laughing at your napkins. Apparently it's not going well. The sister was making her sleep on a pull-out couch in the basement." A grim satisfaction settled in my chest. The woman who mocked my pensioner father was now living the reality she had tried to mock me for. Then came the divorce hearing. It was swift and brutal. Preston appeared via video link from the detention center. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with his complexion. When the judge asked if he contested the divorce or the validity of the post-nuptial agreement, Preston just shook his head. "No, Your Honor," he mumbled. "Mr. Ramos," the judge said sternly, "you admitted to signing a waiver of interest in the property at 405 Highland Avenue. You also admitted to adultery. The plaintiff has provided extensive evidence. Do you have anything to say?" Preston looked at the camera. For a second, our eyes met across the digital divide. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "You made several crimes." The judge corrected him. "Divorce granted. The plaintiff retains all assets. You are ordered to pay legal fees." Of course, he couldn't pay. I absorbed the cost. A final stupidity tax for trusting the wrong man. Kendra didn't get off scot-free either. Without Preston's support, and with the scandal of the arrest making the local news, she lost her job at the boutique where she worked. Rumors swirled in our small social circle. She tried to reach out to me once, sending a long, rambling email, blaming Preston for manipulating her, saying she was a victim, too. I didn't reply. I just forwarded it to Preston's defense attorney. Let them eat each other. The final nail in the coffin was the sentencing for the embezzlement. My father, Robert, took the stand to give a victim impact statement. He didn't shout. He stood tall, looking every inch the titan of industry he was. "Trust is the currency of business," Dad said, his voice resonating in the courtroom. "Mr. Ramos didn't just steal money, he stole trust. He entered my family under false pretenses, targeted my daughter, and used my company as his personal piggy bank. He is not a victim of circumstance. He is a predator who got caught." Preston got 5 years. Brenda got 2 years probation and community service, largely because she turned state's witness against her own son to save her skin. That was the final betrayal. Brenda threw Preston under the bus, claiming he forced her to launder the money. I watched Preston's face as his mother testified against him. The look of utter devastation was almost enough to make me pity him. Almost. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. The air was crisp. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with oxygen that didn't smell of lies or cheap cologne. I was divorced. I was single. I was 30 years old. I got into my car, my real car this time, a sleek Mercedes convertible that I had kept in storage. I put the top down. As I drove away, leaving the courthouse and the Ramos family in the rearview mirror, I felt lighter than I had in years. The dusty, fearful girl under the bed was gone. In her place was a woman forged in fire. But the fire had left burns, and healing those burns would take much longer than the revenge. 3 years passed. Revenge is like a sugar rush, intense, satisfying, but followed by a crash. After the adrenaline of destroying Preston and Brenda faded, I was left with the quiet wreckage of my own trust issues. I threw myself into work. I stopped hiding. I joined Titan Construction officially, not as an admin, but as the director of operations. I wore my name, Valerie Smith Vanderbilt, like armor. I worked 16-hour days, turning Titan into an even bigger empire. I became known as the Ice Queen. In the boardroom, efficient, brilliant, and utterly unapproachable. Dating? Forget about it. Men were liabilities. Every time a man smiled at me, I wondered what he wanted. Did he see me, or did he see the bank account? Did he see a partner, or a stepping stone? My only solace was music. I had played piano as a child, but I had stopped when I met Preston because he said classical music was boring. Now I bought a Steinway grand for my new house, a modern glass sanctuary overlooking the river, far away from the tainted condo. Every night, I played Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Debussy. I poured my anger, my grief, and my loneliness into the keys. One evening, my father convinced me to attend a charity gala for the arts. I didn't want to go. I hated these events, fake smiles, expensive champagne, and people pitching business ideas. Just 1 hour, Val, Dad said, adjusting his tuxedo. It's for the symphony. You love the symphony. So I went. I stood in the corner, nursing a sparkling water, checking emails on my phone, waiting for the polite amount of time to pass before I could escape. You look like you'd rather be getting a root canal, a voice said next to me. I stiffened. My Ice Queen mask slammed into place. I turned slowly. Standing there was a man, tall, broad shoulders, wearing a tuxedo that fit well but looked slightly lived in. He had messy dark hair and eyes that were the color of warm amber. Actually, I said coldly, I'd prefer an audit. Root canals take too long. He laughed. It wasn't a polite society laugh. It was a deep, genuine sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I'm Marshall, he said, extending a hand. I'm the architect who designed the new wing of the museum. I'm currently hiding from a donor who wants to discuss the feng shui of the bathrooms. I hesitated, then shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and rough. Calloused. These were hands that worked, not just hands that signed checks. Valerie, I said briefly. Valerie, he repeated. Well, Valerie, since we're both hiding, do you want to see something cool? The acoustics in the main hall are incredible when it's empty. Against my better judgment, I followed him. We snuck into the main concert hall during the intermission of the quartet. The stage was empty, save for a long grand piano. Go on, Marshall said, gesturing to the piano. I saw your fingers twitching while the quartet was playing. You play, don't you? I haven't played in public in years. There's no public here. Just me and the ghosts of Mozart. I sat down. I touched the keys and I played. I played a nocturne that was full of longing and sorrow. The music swelled, filling the vast empty hall, echoing off the wood and velvet. I closed my eyes, forgetting where I was, forgetting the betrayal, forgetting the fear. When I finished, silence hung in the air. I opened my eyes. Marshall was watching me. He wasn't looking at my jewelry. He wasn't looking at my dress. He was looking at my face with an expression of raw wonder. That was... He started, his voice thick with emotion. That was the saddest, most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Who hurt you, Valerie? The question was so direct, so unexpected that I flinched. "That's none of your business," I snapped, standing up abruptly. The walls came back up. "I have to go." "Wait," he called out as I hurried off the stage. "Let me take you to dinner. Real dinner, not these tiny appetizers." "No," I said, walking faster. "I don't date." "I'm not asking for a date," he said, jogging to catch up. "I'm asking to know the person who can make a piano cry like that." I stopped. I looked at him. He seemed sincere. But Preston had seemed sincere, too. Preston had picked up my muddy wallet. Preston had driven me to work. "I can't," I whispered. "I really can't." I ran out of the gala like Cinderella, but instead of leaving a glass slipper, I left behind the first crack in my armor. Marshall didn't give up. He didn't send flowers or jewelry. The next day, a package arrived at my office. It was a book of rare sheet music, obscure pieces by female composers from the 19th century. The note read, "For the music, no strings attached." I traced the cover of the book. No strings. Maybe, just maybe, I could let one string loose. It took Marshall 6 months to get me to agree to a proper dinner. 6 months of coffee runs where we talked about architecture and structural engineering. 6 months of him proving over and over that he wasn't interested in my status. He didn't know who my father was for the first 3 months. He thought I was just a high-level manager. When he finally found out I was the Valerie Smith Vanderbilt, heiress to Titan, his reaction wasn't excitement. It was annoyance. "Great," he groaned, putting his head on the table at the diner we frequented. "Now I have to worry about people thinking I'm a gold digger. Do you have any idea how hard it is to buy a birthday present for a woman who can buy a country?" "I don't need presents," I said, watching him carefully. "You're getting a hand-carved birdhouse," he grumbled. "Because that's all I can make that you can't buy." And he did. He carved me a birdhouse. It was crooked and the paint was uneven. But I put it on my mantelpiece next to my Ming vases. It was the most valuable thing in the room. The real test came when he invited me to meet his family. I was terrified. I expected another Brenda. I expected judgment or sycophancy. Marshall's family lived in a chaotic, noisy house in the suburbs. His mother was a retired school teacher, his father a mechanic. They were loud. They interrupted each other, and they hugged everyone. "So you're the Valerie who plays the piano?" his mom, Barb, exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that smelled of cinnamon and fabric softener. "Marshall says you're smarter than him." Thank God. We were worried. Nobody asked about my money. Nobody asked about my dad's company. They asked if I liked spicy food. I did. If I watched football, I didn't, but I was willing to learn. And if I wanted to see baby pictures of Marshall naked in a bathtub, I definitely did. It was normal. It was the Sunday barbecues and silence Preston had promised but never delivered. But the ghost of Preston still haunted me. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept waiting for Marshall to ask for a loan or for his mom to mention a business opportunity. It never happened. The breaking point was a year into our relationship. My father, Robert, had a minor heart attack. I was a wreck. I was at the hospital, pacing the hallway, terrified of losing the only rock I had left. I tried to push Marshall away. "Go home," I told him. "You don't have to be here. It's going to be a long night." "Shut up, Val," he said gently. He guided me to a chair. He draped his jacket over my shoulders. He went to the vending machine and got me terrible coffee, and he sat there holding my hand for 12 straight hours. He didn't check his phone. He didn't complain. He just held on. When Dad woke up, groggy and grumpy, Marshall was the first one to crack a joke. "Mr. Smith," Marshall said, "you really went to extreme lengths to get out of our golf game next week." Dad chuckled weakly. He looked at Marshall, then at me. He saw the way Marshall looked at me, with exhaustion, but with absolute devotion. Later, when I was walking Marshall to his car, I broke down. "Why are you so good to me?" I sobbed. "I'm difficult. I'm suspicious. I'm damaged goods. Marshall stopped. He grabbed my shoulders and looked me in the eye. You're not damaged goods, Val. You're a survivor. You're the strongest woman I know. And I love you. Not the heiress, not the director. I love the woman who hides under the bed to prank her husband because she has a playful heart. I love the woman who plays sad songs on the piano. I just love you. I froze. I hadn't told him the hiding under the bed story. How did he know? You talk in your sleep. He grinned sheepishly. Something about dust bunnies and mothers-in-law. I laughed through the tears. I laughed. 2 years after that night, Marshall proposed. He didn't do it with a flash mob or a diamond the size of a skating rink. He did it on a Tuesday while we were making lasagna. Marry me, he said, holding a wooden spoon. I signed a prenup already. Justine has it. It says I leave with what I came with, my tools and my good looks. I just want you. I looked at him. I looked for the lie, for the hidden agenda. There was nothing. Just love. Yes, I said. But you're keeping the birdhouse. Life has a funny way of circling back, just when you think you've outrun it. 5 years had passed since the divorce. I was 35. Marshall and I were married, living in a marital bliss that was boring in the best possible way. We had a daughter, Haley, who was 2 years old and had my father's stubborn chin and Marshall's amber eyes. I was walking out of the Titan headquarters one rainy afternoon. My driver was waiting with the umbrella, but I stopped. A woman was standing near the entrance of the parking garage. She was arguing with security. She looked old, much older than her years. Her hair was gray and stringy. Her coat was thin and patched. She was holding a cleaning bucket. I just need to speak to her, the woman yelled, her voice raspy. I recognized that voice. It lacked the imperious snap it once had, but the pitch was the same. Brenda, I whispered. She turned. Her face was gaunt, lines etched deeper on her mouth. When she saw me in my tailored suit, glowing with health and success, her shoulders slumped. Valerie, she croaked. I signaled the security guard to stand down. It's okay, Frank. I walked over to her, keeping a safe distance. What do you want, Brenda? If you're here to clean, the service entrance is in the back. It was cruel, yes, but this woman had plotted to leave me destitute. I'm not here for a job, she said, her hands trembling. I'm here to beg. Brenda Ramos begging. The irony was almost too rich to digest. Beg for what? It's the boy. Leo. Who is Leo? Preston's son, she said, looking down at her worn shoes. Kendra's boy. He's 5. Kendra, she took off 2 years ago. Met a trucker. Left the kid with me. Said she didn't want the baggage. So Kendra had abandoned her child. I wasn't surprised. And he's sick, Valerie. He has leukemia. We don't have insurance. Medicaid only covers so much. He needs a specialist. He needs help. She looked up at me and for the first time, I saw genuine tears in her eyes. Not the crocodile tears she used to fake. These were the tears of a grandmother watching a child die. Preston is still inside, she continued, her voice breaking. He can help. I'm cleaning houses, but it's not enough. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I know you hate us. I know we deserve it, but Leo is innocent. He's just a little boy. I stood there, the rain tapping against the umbrella. I looked at this broken woman. I remembered the night under the bed. She has no idea she's just a glorified placeholder. I felt a surge of old anger. Why should I help? This was the child conceived in betrayal. This was the tangible proof of Preston's affair. But then I thought of Haley, my beautiful, healthy daughter, sleeping in her crib at home. I thought of my mother, who died of a broken heart but never lost her kindness. I won't give you money, I said coldly. Brenda flinched, looking defeated. I understand. I won't give you money, I repeated. Because I don't trust you not to spend it on bingo or booze. But tell me the name of the hospital. Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, she whispered. I will contact the hospital directly. If the boy is there and if he is sick, I will cover his treatment anonymously. Titan Construction has a charity fund. We'll label it a grant. Brenda stared at me. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She slowly dropped to her knees on the wet pavement. Thank you, she sobbed, clutching at the hem of my pants. Thank you? You're an angel. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I stepped back, pulling my leg away. I felt no triumph in seeing her kneel. Just pity. Get up, Brenda, I said. I'm not an angel. I'm just a mother. And tell Preston, actually, don't tell him anything. I don't want him to know. He asks about you, she said, wiping her nose on her sleeve. He sends letters. You never answer. I burned them, I said. Goodbye, Brenda. I turned and walked to my car. As I settled into the leather seat, I felt a heavy weight lift off my chest. I hadn't forgiven them, but I hadn't let their darkness turn me into a monster. I had saved an innocent life. That night, I held Haley a little tighter. I thought charity was enough closure, but the universe had one last horrifying card to play. A month after I agreed to pay for Leo's treatment, I received a notification from the Department of Corrections. Preston had requested a visitation. Usually I ignored these, but the note attached was different. Regarding Leo and regarding why you never got pregnant. My blood ran cold. During our short marriage and the months leading up to it, we hadn't used protection. I had wanted a baby. I had cried every month when the test was negative. Preston had always comforted me, saying, "It will happen when it happens." I drove to the state prison. The walls were gray. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. I sat behind the plexiglass. Preston was brought in. He looked 20 years older. His hair was thinning, his skin pasty. He walked with a limp. The swagger was gone, replaced by a permanent hunch of defeat. He picked up the phone. I picked up mine. "Valerie," he said. His voice was rough. "You look incredible." "I'm happy, Preston," I said. "Something you never wanted me to be. I heard about Leo. Mom told me." "Thank you. I did it for the boy, not for you." "I know. Look, I don't have much time. I wanted to tell you something. An apology isn't enough, but I need to clear my conscience." He took a deep breath, looking at his shackled hands. "You remember how you wanted a baby? How you were worried you were infertile?" "Yes," I said, my grip tightening on the receiver. "You weren't infertile. Though. Mom. She made me do it." "Do what?" "She crushed up emergency contraceptive pills. Plan B. She put them in your smoothies. The ones she made for you when you came over for brunch. Or she'd swap your daily vitamins with placebos." I stopped breathing. The room spun. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would she do that?" "You wanted a family, not with you," Preston admitted, the truth hanging there like a rotting corpse. "Mom said if you got pregnant, it would be harder to divorce you later. A kid binds you for 18 years. She wanted a clean break once we got the condo. She said we couldn't risk having a kid with your genes mixed with ours. She wanted Kendra to have my heir." I felt a wave of nausea so strong I thought I would faint. It wasn't just greed. It was a biological violation. They had poisoned me. They had violated my body to ensure I wouldn't bear a child. All while I was crying on Preston's shoulder about not being able to conceive. "You monster," I hissed. Tears of rage pricked my eyes. "You let her drug me." "I was weak," Preston said, crying now. "I'm sorry, Val. I was so afraid of her. And I was so greedy. But look, it's a blessing, right? Imagine if we had a kid. You'd be tied to me forever. Now you're free. You have a new life." He was right. In the sickest, most twisted way possible. If I had had a child with Preston, I would never have truly escaped Brenda. I would be co-parenting with a felon. My daughter Haley wouldn't exist. You're right, I said, my voice trembling. It is a blessing. Because my children will never have a single drop of your poisonous blood in their veins. I stood up. Val, wait. Preston shouted. I have parole coming up in 2 years. Can you put in a good word? Since you helped Leo. I looked at him through the glass. The audacity was breathtaking. Preston, I said. I helped Leo because he is an innocent child. You are a grown man who drugged his wife. I will not put in a good word. In fact, I'm going to send the transcript of this conversation to the parole board. I hope you rot in here. I slammed the phone down. I walked out of the prison into the bright sunlight. I collapsed onto a bench near the parking lot and sobbed. I cried for the baby I thought I couldn't have. I cried for the violation. But mostly, I cried from relief. Marshall found me there later. I had called him, unable to drive. He held me while I shook. They can't hurt you anymore, he promised. And he was right. The secret was out. The poison was purged. I was finally, truly clean. 10 years later, Titan Construction had grown into an international conglomerate. I was the CEO now. My father, Robert, had passed away peacefully in his sleep a year ago. His funeral was attended by senators, competitors, and thousands of employees who respected him. I stood at the helm of the empire, no longer the girl hiding under the bed, but a woman who commanded rooms with a single glance. Marshall and I had been married for 12 years. We had 2 children now, Haley, 15, and a son, Jack, 10. We were sitting on the patio of our summer home in the Hamptons. It was a rare, quiet evening. Mom, Haley said, looking up from her phone. She was a beautiful girl, smart, but with a romantic streak that reminded me, terrifyingly, of my younger self. Can I invite Tyler over for the weekend? Tyler was her new boyfriend. Captain of the football team. Charming. Too charming. Tyler? I asked, exchanging a look with Marshall. The one who forgot his wallet when you went to the movies last week? He's just forgetful, Mom. Haley defended. He's really sweet. He says he loves that I'm not obsessed with money like other girls. The alarm bells in my head rang so loud they were deafening. He loves that I'm not obsessed with money. That was exactly what Preston had said. It was the Predator's opening line. Haley, I said gently. Does Tyler know about us? About the company? I didn't tell him details. She shrugged. But everyone knows who we are. It's hard to hide when your name is on skyscrapers. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. The cycle. It was trying to repeat itself. Invite him, I said. I'd love to get to know him better. Marshall squeezed my knee under the table. He knew what I was doing. I wasn't going to forbid it. I was going to test him. When Tyler arrived that weekend, he was polite. Too polite. He complimented the house, the cars, the art. He asked Marshall about his architecture firm with a little too much interest in the profit margins. During dinner, I decided to run a little experiment. Tyler, I said casually, Haley tells me you're looking for a summer internship. Yes, Mrs. Vanderbilt. He smiled, flashing perfect teeth. I'd love to learn from the best. Maybe at Titan? Well, I said, we have an opening. It's manual labor. Pouring concrete. 5 a.m. starts. Minimum wage, but it builds character. If you do well, we can talk about a desk job next summer. I watched his face. The smile faltered. The light in his eyes dimmed. Oh, he said. I was thinking maybe something in strategy or marketing. I'm not really a manual labor kind of guy. Strategy requires understanding the foundation. Marshall added, sipping his wine. I laid bricks for 3 years before I drew a blueprint. Tyler looked at Haley. Babe, didn't you say your mom could get me a hookup? Concrete pouring is kind of beneath me, don't you think? Haley froze. She looked at him. Really looked at him. Beneath you? She asked. My grandfather poured concrete. My dad laid bricks. Yeah, but they had to. Tyler laughed nervously. We're, elite. The silence at the table was heavy. I think you should leave, Tyler, Haley said quietly. What? I said leave. My family built this life with hard work. If you think work is beneath you, then I'm above you. I almost cried. She didn't need me to hide under a bed. She had learned the lesson through osmosis. She had the self-worth I had lacked at her age. Tyler left in a huff. Haley came over and hugged me. You knew, didn't you? She asked. I suspected. I kissed her forehead. Always watch how they treat the work, not the reward. A week after the Tyler incident, I received a call from a hospice center in downtown Atlanta. It was regarding Brenda. She was dying. Ovarian cancer. She had no family left. Her sister had kicked her out years ago. Preston was still in prison. He had violated parole once and got sent back. Kendra was long gone. She listed you as her emergency contact. The nurse said gently. I don't know why, but she's asking for you. I drove to the hospice. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was clean. Brenda lay in a small bed, looking like a skeleton wrapped in parchment paper. She was unrecognizable from the woman in the silver stilettos. I stood by the door. You came? She rasped. I came, I said. Why? Because I won. It wasn't said with malice. It was just a fact. I had won the game of life she tried to rig. I was happy, loved, and successful. She was dying alone. Brenda let out a dry chuckle that turned into a cough. Yes, you did. You were smarter than I gave you credit for. I thought you were just nice. I didn't know nice could have teeth. Nice people have to grow teeth, I said. Or they get eaten by people like you. Leo is doing well, she whispered. He finished college. He's a nurse now. He knows you paid for everything. He calls you his guardian angel. I know. I track his progress. Preston is a fool, she muttered, her eyes closing. I ruined him. I know that now. I made him weak because I wanted to control him. And I tried to do it to you. You failed, I said. I have something. For you. She gestured weakly to the bedside table. A letter. Don't open it until I'm gone. I took the envelope. It felt light. Valerie, she said, her voice fading. I'm scared. I looked at the woman who had tormented me, who had drugged me, who had tried to steal my future. I hated her, but I couldn't let a human being die in terror. I walked over and took her hand. It was cold. Close your eyes, Brenda, I said softly. It's over. Just let go. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. A single tear leaked out. And then the squeeze loosened. The monitor flatlined. She was gone. I walked out into the corridor and opened the letter. Inside was a single sheet of paper and an old, faded Polaroid. The photo was of Preston as a baby, sitting on Brenda's lap. She looked young, hopeful, and not yet hardened by greed. The note read, I hated you because you had everything I wanted without having to fight for it. I was jealous of your light. I tried to steal it, but I only burned myself. You were the best thing that ever happened to my son, and I made him throw you away. I leave you with nothing because I have nothing. But I leave you with this truth, you didn't just survive me. You surpassed me. Tell Leo to be a good man. B. I folded the letter. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt peace. The boogeyman was dead. I paid for her cremation. I had her ashes sent to the prison so Preston could have them. It was the last thing I would ever do for the Ramos family. We are back at the beach house now. It's sunset. The sky is painted in strokes of violent orange and soft purple. I'm sitting on the deck, a glass of vintage wine in my hand, the kind Brenda would have killed for. Down on the sand, Marshall is trying to teach Jack how to fly a kite. Haley is sitting on a towel, reading a book, looking like a younger version of me, but with a stronger spine. My life is full. It is loud. It is messy. And it is real. I think back to that night 20 years ago. The dust under the bed, the smell of the floorboards, the crushing weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I remember the moment I almost stayed. There was a split second, lying in the dark, where I thought, maybe I can fix him. Maybe if I just love him enough, he'll choose me over the money. Thank God I didn't listen to that voice. Thank God I chose the anger. Thank God I chose the war. People ask me how I can trust again after what happened. How I can love Marshall without checking his pockets for receipts. The answer is simple. The darkness taught me how to recognize the light. Preston taught me what love isn't. Love isn't transactional. Love isn't a secret plan. Love isn't making someone oatmeal so they don't outshine you. Love is Marshall carving a crooked birdhouse. Love is my father standing in a courtroom defending my honor. Love is me paying for a sick boy's chemotherapy even though his father broke my heart. Love is action. I take a sip of wine and look at the camera, at you, the listener. Maybe you're hiding under a bed right now. Maybe not literally. Maybe you're in a marriage where you feel small. Maybe you're with a family that makes you feel like an outsider. Maybe you suspect that the people who smile at your face are sharpening knives behind your back. I'm here to tell you, trust your gut. If you feel like something is wrong, it is. If you feel like you are being used, you are. Don't stay in the dark. Don't wait for them to change. They won't. Preston never changed at all. You have to be your own hero. You have to crawl out from under the bed, dust off your dress, and walk out the door. It will hurt. God, it will hurt. You will cry until you have no tears left. You will feel stupid for having been fooled. But then you will get angry, and that anger will be the fuel that builds your empire. I put the glass down and walk towards the railing. Marshall looks up from the beach and waves. Wow. Look, it's flying. The kite soars high into the wind, fighting the resistance, climbing higher and higher until it catches the current and stabilizes, dancing against the clouds. I see it. I yell back. It's beautiful. I am Valerie Smith Vanderbilt. I am a mother. I am a CEO. I am a wife. And I am the woman who didn't let the prank be on her. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.